As if you didn't know, we are being filmed, but I have to officially tell you that. Thanks to John for doing it. I'd like to welcome Craig Bowdery from the Ministry, Alison Loughton and Emily Starkey from the Boundary Commission. I've got a few figures which I'll just run through, which is the feedback from the consultation, because I thought it would be interesting that you know the sort of responses we've had. We've had 73 responses to date, and they split down into...
Can't hear you very well.
I'm sorry, I thought I had a loud voice. We've had 73 responses to date, and they're split down: parish councils and councillors 27, borough and district councillors 10, county councillors 2, community groups 5, and residents 29. And the comments have generally been split. The majority of comments have been about rural wards, but the towns as well have had quite a significant number. This week, Fiona and Ben will be working through all the responses in order to identify any changes to options that now improve electoral equality and better reflect the community links and identity, and that don't adversely affect other wards. These changes will then be made to the proposed options. Suggested changes that could be made to the proposed options, but that may have an impact on electoral equality within that ward and or surrounding wards. These suggestions will be included in the narrative to the proposed options to LGBCE to consider. Summary of responses received and any changes to the ward proposals made as a result of this consultation feedback will also be provided as part of the papers at both full council meetings at the end of April 2018. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Fiona for all they've done on this. I'm sure they must be both counting the electorate in their sleeve. And having said that, could I hand over to Alison? Oh no, to Craig, who's going to open. Sorry, apologies.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to say a huge amount, largely because I don't know a huge amount. This is a process that will be driven predominantly by the expertise of the Boundary Commission. But the situation we're in, because we are moving quite quickly to do this review, MHCLG, as we are now called, have to be leading this process up until the point at which legally they can take over. The only thing I really wanted to say is, for our perspective, this whole process started at the end of September in 2017, which I think to have got from there to here is quite impressive in such a short amount of time. I spent 12 years working for local authorities, and I think that's the quickest I've ever seen anything actually being done by local authorities. So I think that's a testament both to the work that you as members are doing and also the officers, and just really wanted to echo the thanks to all of your officers who have worked particularly hard and got us the information very, very quickly. We have a fallback position that you may have seen in the order. Just really wanted to reiterate, we have no intention of ever having seen that being used. We don't want it being used because it's not perfect. And so what we're now doing is undergoing the process to make sure that we can get something to replace that is much more fit for purpose and represents your communities better. So really, that's all I have to say, because at that point, my expertise comes to an end. It doesn't take long. So I'll hand over to Alison now.
Hi, I'm Alison Loughton, and I'm the lead commissioner for this, what we will call a review, for the time being. I'm one of 6 commissioners, and we're going to talk to you today about the process of getting from here to the final scheme for West Suffolk. We'll talk to you in the way that we talk about doing all our reviews, but you have to put it in the context that Craig's just said about actually it's not us formally until the order has been made in June. So if it sounds as if it's us up till then, it's not, it's him. It's just too complicated to keep saying it's not really us, it's him. Just read it in that context. I'll just say something briefly about the Local Government Boundary Commission. It's independent of government, so once the order's made, government moves away and we take over, we report to the Speakers Committee. So as I said, there are 6 commissioners, there are about just over 20 staff, and a budget of just under 2 million, and we do roughly 25 reviews a year. Normally what we do in reviews is we look at existing councils and we're trying to achieve electoral equality, and we either do that by intervention or we do it on request. This is obviously, and very excitingly for us, something new, which is the creation of a new authority. But the process that we go through will be very, very similar. And so we just amended the procedure to account for this. And because Emily is going to do all the work, she can talk to you about the procedure. And then we'll take questions at the end, if you don't mind, because some of the questions we may answer as we go through it.
Great, thank you very much. My name's Emily Starkey. I'm the review officer for what will become the review that we're doing of the new authority of West Suffolk. It works. So everybody's aiming for the 2019 elections as the date that these new electoral arrangements that we're going to come up with, that's when they will come into force. Those new wards will be elected on at the 2019 elections. The proposed council size that the commissioners had sight of that is 64. We look at everything based on figures for the current year, and we look 5 years into the future. So by 2023, 2,055 people, electors per councillor under your proposed council size that we've had sight of. The map on the screen, those lines are the existing wards. That map will look extremely different by the end of the review. The outside green line will be the same, everything else will change. In all reviews where there's an alteration in the number of councillors, or if there are areas with significant imbalances in terms of the number of electors, the boundaries that exist will need to be changed to allow for every councillor to represent the same number of people. When we put together a new warding pattern for an area, whether it's in the type of review that we normally do or in a review like this, which is slightly a horse of a different colour, we're not looking just to amend around the edges of existing wards. That approach doesn't work. Often we will get submissions where they've tried to change things just by amending, but as somebody's already mentioned, it will have knock-on effects elsewhere. Looking at small areas in isolation, it can be successful, but when you have large rural areas in particular, often moving one parish will have a significant knock-on effect elsewhere. We use parishes as building blocks for what we do, and we do that because we find that they often reflect community identities better than any other measurable area, and that they're often the cornerstone, especially of local government. And when we ask the council, when we've been to the council and talked about electorate forecasting, that's provided to us broken down by polling district. The reason for that is because it's easier to count the people in a polling district, and that's how it's put on the electoral register. But polling districts are very rarely, I don't think ever, representative of a community that they serve. They are a container for a number of people. And they might be useful for counting electors, but they're not a good basis for a warding pattern. So a warding pattern that's based purely on polling districts, it's sometimes easy to come up with that, but it's not necessarily representative of communities. And the polling districts will change at the end of the review, because the ward boundaries will change, and you'll want to have them contained within that. So I would imagine there'll be a polling district review in the council. Within the council. This presentation covers essentially the next bit of the review. So this is a timeline of what will happen. This timetable won't change. There's no flexibility really in this timetable, aiming for that 2019 election. Everything needs to be completed in time for the council to put it, for different arrangements to be put in place to make sure that that date of the election is met. The first stage of the review, the discussion around the number of councillors, the preparation and laying of the order for the new authority is ongoing, and that runs until June of this year. The order has been laid now. So once this stage concludes, the Commission will be looking at the information received at the June meeting that includes the proposed council size. And a set of draft recommendations will be published in early July, on the 3rd of July 2018. We will then run a period of consultation on the draft recommendations between the 3rd of July and the 27th of August. During that time, anybody that wants to can come and put forward their views on those draft recommendations. In October, we will publish a set of final recommendations. The exact date of the publication is TBC at the moment, due to the possibility of a change in the date of the meeting at which they'll be considered. But once we know that, we'll provide that date. And then an order detailing the new warding patterns for the new authority will be laid in both houses. And once the order is made, it will be elected on at those first elections of the new authority in May of next year. So what will the LGBCE's part of the review, when it comes to being a review, what are we looking at? Total number of wards in the new authority, the boundaries of each of those wards, the number of councillors elected to represent each of those wards, and the names of each ward. With regard to the number of councillors per ward, we do not take a view as to whether single or multi-member wards are better. The new authority will elect on whole council elections, so we're not required to provide for a uniform pattern of 3-member wards. Both authorities at the moment have a mixed pattern of 1, 2 and 3 councillor wards. A single member ward review hasn't been requested either, so any multi-member arrangement is fine. We don't take a view on if there's a better option there. So, provided that the order is made in June, we'll consider both the council size and the draft warding pattern at the Commission will consider it at the meeting in June 2018. There's a deadline for that information to go to CLG, to MHCLG. That's the 4th of May. So everything goes to them, and then we'll be provided with it through the department. And then the stage of consultation that we will undertake over the summer, we're looking at those 4 things that I talked about in the previous slide. There are 3 statutory criteria that the Commission follows when we're looking at coming up with patterns of wards. Electoral equality for voters. We want every ward to have a similar number of electors in it, and we're looking at that based on the forecast figures for 2023, so 5 years after the end of the review. Those figures include projected developments and natural growth in the electorate. Your officers here have been doing some very detailed work on those, and they've been sent to the department. So those figures are the figures that we use once the consultation part of the review starts. Those figures will be on our website, so anyone will be able to see them. People will be able to do their own warding patterns using those numbers. Community identities and interests. What are the different communities in the new authority area? Using practical examples, I find very helpful. Things like they have a shared parish council meetings, or there are grouped parish councils and things like that can be very useful. We also often take a view that it's better to if we have to put 2 communities together rather than split one in half. If the option is between splitting a community or putting 2 very different communities together, putting 2 different communities together is significantly better than splitting one in half. Effective and convenient local government. We're looking for clear, identifiable boundaries. Things like, is there a river that doesn't have a bridge across it that divides this ward in half? That's problematic. Main roads, sometimes they're unifying for a community. If everybody looks towards that road, it might be a split. People don't cross that road, one community's one side, one's the other side. Those kind of things that we're thinking about. The rule of thumb that we follow, the poorer the electoral equality is, the better the community identity evidence has got to be. Those 3 criteria are treated equally by the Commission, but sometimes we find that in representations, people are very tempted to throw the electoral equality out of the window to come up with because of the community identity interests. We have to balance them out. It is a balancing act, and we do try our best to make sure that they're treated as equally as possible. And these criteria, obviously, they apply to the submissions made that's sent to CLG and that then come to the Commission at the following stage. And obviously we're aware that the Council has been undertaking its own consultation on warding patterns, and we really welcome that input. It's really valuable to us as the review progresses, and the things that have been consulted on, I've had a look through them, and I mean, if only we always got things like that, I mean, it's fantastic. It's really great. So thank you very much for putting that work in at the early stage, because it will really help as the review goes on. So when we publish our draft recommendations on the 3rd of July, that will be a report that will say what the draft recommendations are. It will also say why we've decided to do what we are to propose what we're proposing. There'll be that detailed report. There will also be a detailed map, which will be available sort of as a PDF, big map, but there will also be an online mapping portal that you can go and look at very detailed, at a very detailed level, kind of very detailed street level, at where those boundaries are specifically. So that second stage, the consultation on the draft recommendations, that's the opportunity to comment to the Commission on the boundaries, the number and the name of the wards, and we invite submissions at that stage, not only from the Council, but from residents, community groups, parish and town councils, individual councillors, county councillors. So anybody that has an interest in the review can comment at that stage. I want to talk a little bit more about that, because you know your communities best. The reviews that we find work best are those where local residents, parish councils, councillors, and everybody that's interested in the review gets involved and makes submissions, providing us with the evidence that we can use to come up with a good, robust pattern of wards. Where people don't get involved, that's where we find that we run into issues, because it becomes a desk-based exercise, and that's not what we want. This review is about shaping the new council for the longer term, and these will serve a newly formed authority, these wards, and we want to make sure that we're putting in place the right arrangements, not just for now, not just for the very start, but for 5, 10, 15 years into the future. And ultimately, these will be your wards. So we want to make sure that they'll work well for the people of West Suffolk, but for the representatives of West Suffolk as well. So that's why we encourage as many people as we can to make submissions. The LGBCE is transparent and consultative. Everything that we receive, all of the submissions we get, will be published on our website shortly after the consultation period closes. And we obviously remove personal identifiers, but everything will be published online so people can see. If you're looking for examples of previous submissions, you can go on and look at all of the other reviews that we've done. All of the submissions we receive are published on our website. So what's an effective representation? We get asked that question a lot. What are we looking for? We're looking for rationale, not just assertion. Tell us why something is good. Why is this the best option for that area? Telling me that this is a good idea is great, but I need to know why it's a good idea. How does it meet those statutory criteria I talked about earlier on? Tell us what you do like, tell us what you don't like. This option wouldn't work because of X. A better idea is this. Because we'll be consulting on the draft recommendations, there'll be a set of proposals to comment on. If you don't like something, please tell us, but don't just tell us you don't like it. Tell us why you don't like it, and give us an alternative, and tell us why that alternative is better. Because if you don't, someone else probably will tell us they do like it, and we'll confirm it. And vice versa is true as well. If you do like something, please tell us. Because if 300 people like something but they don't tell us, and 2 people don't like it and they do tell us and give us evidence, we might be minded to change our mind on that, because people have commented. So we encourage people to tell us if they do like something as well as if they don't. Practical community examples are really important because they help us to put together something that reflects the area. And do think about those 3 statutory criteria, because they are kind of the underpinning of everything that I do as a review officer. and that the Commission does as a wider body. There are a few things we don't consider. We don't take into account political consequences. We're looking to cover those 3 statutory criteria. We can spot a politically motivated submission a mile off. I've been doing this a while. It's obvious when it comes in. So by all means, if you wanted to try it, please do, but we can spot it, and it does help in the long run. We don't take into account if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because the ward boundaries will need to change for the new authority, and the most appropriate way to make sure that they are representative and helpful and work well is to make representations for new options. We don't take into account parliamentary constituency boundaries. We cannot affect the parliamentary constituency boundaries either. That's a totally different body. We don't look at postcodes or addresses as part of the review, and there's no evidence to suggest that it will have an impact on people's house prices or their insurance. We do get submissions that talk about that. That doesn't factor into what we're doing at all. Making a submission, and a good submission, on the screen and on the printouts that you've got are comments from parish councils and neighbourhood associations. And this is the kind of evidence that we're looking for in submissions, things that tell us about the area in question and that focus on one or more of the statutory criteria. And as I said, all of the submissions we receive are published on our website, and they can be very helpful if you're looking to put together a submission, especially if you want to make a submission based on a particular area rather than an overarching submission, because we give every submission that we receive equal weight. Well-evidenced submissions, no matter who they're from, are vital to the review process. So we've in the past adopted a scheme from a local resident for a whole district council. We've adopted parish council submissions over county council submissions because they contain better evidence and they better reflect our statutory criteria. So it doesn't matter who the submission comes from, if it's well evident and it's got good adherence to those criteria, that's what we're looking for. If there's a pattern of wards that you think would be better, or you have comments, that consultation period over the summer, that's the time to come to us and say, this is what I think about the draft recommendations, this is where I disagree, and this is what I think would be a better solution, and why. So, as I said, we're a transparent organisation. There are a lot of different ways you can get in contact with us. Once the order is made in June, there will be a page specifically for the West Suffolk Review on our website. On there will be all of the submissions that we get at different parts of the review process, and all of the information that I talked about, so the forecast, electoral forecast information will be on there. You'll also be able to go onto our consultation portal, which I'll talk about in a second. But you can make submission to us in 3 different ways. You can write to us if you want to, send us submissions by post. You can email us, and you can use our consultation portal. We can't take submissions over the phone. We can't give specific advice on what would be better in a submission. So if you ring me up and say, I don't know whether would you accept it if we did this specific thing? Can't do that. But if there are questions about the process or more general questions about the review, once we kick off, then do give us a ring, and we're always happy to help. If you call us, we're a small organisation, as Alison said. I'm always happy to talk to people on the phone. If you do have a question, just ring us up, and we can help you out there. And there's a lot of guidance available on our website as well, if you're looking for sort of more technical guidance. Just to briefly talk about the portal that we have. I know it says Cornwall, but there isn't a page yet for West Suffolk. If you want to, there will be a map on the website that looks like, it'll be like this. Once we kick off, once there's a set of draft recommendations, it'll be on there. You'll be able to go in, look, you can draw on it, label it, comment on it to whatever level of detail you want to, and submit it directly to us. You can also make a text-based submission on there without doing any drawing on the map as well. So if you wanted to just talk about a particular area, if you just wanted to say that actually we think that the ward name for this ward should be X instead of this, for whatever reason, you can go on there and do it that way as well, and as can any of the residents or parish councils if they want to use that. I want to talk briefly about parishes and parish wards because it's something that it is very important to the review process. It's also a question that we always get asked at these meetings. How will the review impact on parishes and parish and town councils and on parish warding arrangements, parish electoral arrangements? The Commission, we have very specific powers on what we can and can't do in relation to parishes as a result of reviews. If a new ward boundary, a new district ward boundary passes through a parish, that will necessitate the creation of parish warding arrangement, new parish warding arrangements there. If that parish already has parish wards, those will be changed to reflect that new ward boundary. They might not be completely changed, but they will be changed in some capacity, and the parish councillors will be reallocated based on the number of electors that are going to be in that parish ward. That creation of parish wards is the only amendment to parish arrangements that we're going to be making as a result of this review. We can't create parishes. We can't abolish parishes. We do get submissions saying, you're going to get rid of our parish. We're not going to do that. We can't. We don't want to anyway, but we can't. We can't change the external boundary of a parish. That's not up to us. That's the council would do that. We won't be looking to change the number of parish councillors elected to a parish council. And we won't be amending parish wards if they're not affected by the new wards that we're creating. If a parish is wholly within a ward, we won't do anything there to the parish warding arrangements. They'll stay as they are now. Just a brief word on community governance reviews. Local authorities can carry out community governance reviews to change parish arrangements. Often we find that that's where there's an odd-looking anomaly on the board on the outside of a parish where it goes up a road that it doesn't need to, or it reflects an old field boundary, for example. If a CGR is carried out, the council would need to follow a related alterations process and get consent from the Commission to change the ward boundary to reflect those parish boundaries. We would ask that you don't think about starting CGRs during the review process, just because it makes things really complicated. If you do have specific questions about that, do let us know, because we can talk through it in more detail. But what I would say is also that we say to people, please don't try and use that process to change the LGBCE's recommendations once the review is over, because we can tell that's what people are trying to do. But that's a different process, and if people need advice on that, then we can provide that sort of separately. Just to sum up then, there are the 4 things, aside from the council size that's being considered sort of as a separate thing, there are 4 things that we'll asked to think about when looking at a pattern of wards for the authority. The number of wards, the boundaries of those wards, the number of councillors for each ward, and the names being proposed. I would say actually that the names often prove to be the most contentious thing. So if you have particularly strong thoughts on those, then do let us know. Otherwise, we have to come up with them ourselves, and we would always rather that they were locally generated. But everything that we do during those consultation periods, it all comes down to evidence that we receive. It enables us to put together a pattern of wards that reflects your community identities and provides for good electoral equality if we get good evidence. It makes my job easier, it makes the recommendations significantly better, and the authorities where the reviews go best is where people are engaged with the process and able to make good submissions because they're thinking about balancing those criteria. And as I say, tell us why. Anything you want, if you want us to do something or don't, tell us why. That's the most important thing.